Good afternoon and welcome to Webinar Wednesday. Today we are joined by Kevin O'Reilly, the Right to Repair Campaign Director at the Public Interest Research Group. Kevin has worked with hundreds of biomeds, hospitals, ISOs and professional societies from across the country to push for medical right to repair legislation at the state and federal level. We want you to be up to date on the latest news from the TechNation community. So in the handout section of your webinar dashboard, you'll find a few PDFs, including the pre-show planner for our HTM Mixer in Baltimore this May from 11th to 12th, information on the call for presenters for the October MD Expo in Orlando, details on our HTM Week contest, and applications for the 2023 class of 40 under 40. So when you have a chance, please have a look at your dashboard. Okay, today's webinar is eligible for 1 CE credit from the ACI. You can obtain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey, which will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE credit from the ACI, and you'll be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. Let's kick off today's webinar by giving away one of our Webinar Wednesday t-shirts to the attendee that can tell me the answer to the following trivia question. April is National Pecan Month. Which state is the biggest producer of pecans? Answer now using the questions feature on your dashboard, and I'll reveal the answer at the end of the webinar. We'll wrap up today's presentation with a live Q&A, so please submit your questions anytime using the questions feature on the webinar dashboard. As I mentioned earlier, our presenter today is Kevin O'Reilly, and he will be discussing medical right to repair and anti-competitive behaviour. Kevin, you may begin whenever you're ready.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And it's so good to be talking with y'all today about right to repair, about the importance of this issue in the medical device space. Talk about a little bit of the advancements we've made, the progress that we've made, as well as what you can do to help us nail down the facts when it comes to the issues at the core of right to repair. And, you know, at the end of the day, that is a huge part of how we can make change, how we can make sure that hospitals and ISOs have access to everything they need to fix equipment, which ultimately is, you know, the right thing to do for patients and safety, and also a great way to hopefully help bring down the cost of healthcare. But I'm going to go ahead and share a few slides here. So let's get that started here. Oh, that is not what you want to see. Look at all this stuff I got on my background. That's not a good look, eh? Okay. Sorry for this, folks. Let's see here. There we go. All right, sorry for the technical difficulties getting started here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about right to repair, right? I'm sure that y'all have dealt with this problem yourselves. So I want to talk about, first of all, the bigger problem that we're seeing across industries, across, you know, our country and, you know, across the globe really, and place medical right to repair within a broader nationwide and global movement that's been developing. First of all, just a little bit on me. You know, I'm the Right to Repair Campaign Director with PIRG. So much of my focus over the past 5 years has been on medical equipment repair restrictions as related to that. I've done research and, you know, worked with biomeds and clinical engineers and the like across the country to try and advance right to repair legislation and reforms. A quick bit on PIRG. So PIRG stands for the Public Interest Research Group. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan public interest advocacy organization, and we work to advance change in the direction of consumer protection, environmental protection, public health, good governance, and the like. And right to repair has been a key part of that mission for the past, you know, going on a decade here. So we operate in states across the country. You know, we've got CalPERG, CoPERG, MassPERG here in Massachusetts. I'm based in Boston. And we push for legislation and change at both the state and federal level. So let's start by talking about right to repair, what it is, what we're trying to get at. And I think right to repair boils down to two common sense, really American ideals, right? That when you own something, you should be able to do what you want with it. And when something breaks, you should fix it, right? So right to repair is kind of the combination of those two things, and that when your stuff breaks, you should be able to fix it, whether that is a ventilator or a John Deere tractor or a smartphone or a dishwasher, whatever it is, we should be able to fix stuff. But the fact of the matter is that that's not the case, right? Unfortunately, we've seen a shift across society to a throwaway society, right? Whereas, maybe our grandparents and going back further generations, right? They would find ways to make the most of what they had, right? They would repair it when they broke. They would refurbish it if it needed an update. They would repurpose it when it was no longer fulfilling its original use. And then, at the very last option, if all of those other things had been exhausted, then yes, they would throw things away. But that's not the case anymore, right? If, for example, let's say you've got a pair of wireless headphones and the battery starts to, lose its charge. It's not holding charge the way it used to be. Seems like a great opportunity to get a new set of headphones. Same for your cell phone, right? Maybe you crack your screen. Why not upgrade to the latest model? But that has serious implications, right? Both for our planet, both for the cost of owning these devices. And it's just a wasteful way to live and not one that we should continue to do. So, this is not, I'm not here to rail on millennials or Gen Z, or as a millennial myself, that's the last thing I want to do, saying that they're lazy, et cetera, et cetera. We've all heard it. But there's a reason that this shift has happened, and it really goes back to the fact that we've been trained to, essentially view our electronics as disposable. And that's a big part of that is because of the integration into software, into everything that we use, right? These days, everything is digital, everything's got a chip, and as a result, manufacturers have used that software and software locks to lock out independent repair, right? They do that so, frankly, they can attempt to monopolize parts of the repair market, meaning they can charge what they want, they can rely on that revenue to come through, which is good for bottom lines, but it's bad for consumers, it's bad for patients, it's bad for the environment, right? So I actually want to touch briefly on the environmental impact of right to repair, right? And while we often think of the waste aspect, which I'll also share some of our research there, it's also the case that there are environmental impacts across a product's life cycle, going from extraction to processing to disposal. So, starting with extraction, much of the rare earth minerals that form the critical parts of our modern electronic equipment come from areas like the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Bolivia and Chile, where mining leads to soil and water contamination, as well as also, human rights abuses. And even if we do that mining here in the United States, which is a push that's happening, this basically involves digging a giant crater into the earth to extract finite resources that will run out at some point. So the way that we're currently doing this is simply not sustainable. Let's also look at the processing, right? And using laptops as an example, we've produced a ton of laptops every single year globally. The carbon, emissions equivalent from that is the same as 15 million cars running on the road for a year. So it's a ton of emissions, especially as we're dealing with, a changing climate and, impending environmental problems as a result of that. And then the last part, of course, is disposal, right? And electronic waste, it's not by any means the largest part of our broader waste stream, but without a doubt, it is the most toxic. So when these devices get, thrown out, they end up in the landfill. They are, again, leaching toxic and harmful chemicals into our soil, into our water, and that, makes its way to folks unfortunately makes its way into folks' diet, et cetera. So it's a real problem. And while there are, electronics recyclers who do their best to recycle and get back much of the valuable materials out of this, unfortunately, between manufacturers refusing to provide access to schematics and information on what sits where in a product, as well as anti kind of repair design aspects, things like using glue instead of fasteners, make it really hard to extract a lot of this stuff. So too much of it is ending up in the landfill. So that's, the environmental case behind right to repair more broadly, right? But I think as consumers, and, again, not focusing necessarily on the medical aspect, because I think a lot of you know a lot, maybe more than I do, honestly, about that aspect, I would also say, it's pretty analogous to what hospitals are facing and what consumers are dealing with. So we actually did some research that found that, consumers, if they were able to fix rather than replace some common household electronics, they'd be able to save a combined $40 billion per year in the US. So, inflation is, been unfortunately persistent, and for many folks, family budgets are tight. And so being able to keep stuff working is a really important aspect to making sure that, the fact of the matter is you need these electronics to participate in today's digital economy, digital society. So this is a good way to allow them to do so while also keeping some cash in their pockets. And, there's actually been some research to show that a lot of consumers would actually like to have their devices last longer, right? I remember there's a very old Maytag ad that has maybe a washing machine, and you watch as this boy turns into a man, turns into an old man, all while the same Maytag washing machine is sitting there. And companies literally used to market that their materials would last longer, that their products would last longer than their competitors, and that's just changed. But good news is that consumers do want to see change back in the right direction. So that's a bit on the problem, right? But let's talk about what right to repair means from a legislative standpoint, right? What it means, and what we're pushing, the solution that we're pushing this problem. And so what we have is we've got standard right to repair legislation, which has been introduced this year in 26 different states across the country. We've had a number of bills in Congress that have surfaced and been introduced and been advocated for by, across both sides of the aisle. And, that's true at the state level too. These are blue states, red states, purple states. At the end of the day, everybody understands people should be able to fix their stuff. And what we call for is essentially the ability to create an environment in which independent repair can thrive, right? So that means that manufacturers would have to provide replacement parts, repair tools, and then repair information, both, the good old-fashioned manual, in the case of medical equipment, right, the necessary training, and then, of course, those all-important software tools, the service keys, et cetera, that are needed to diagnose modern equipment, and then also authorize repairs once they've been made. So we've, I think we can likely all agree that right to repair is common sense, right? We should be able to fix our stuff. What's the holdup? The fact of the matter is that we are up against, frankly, some of the biggest companies in the world, right? We actually did some research a couple years ago that found companies worth a combined 10.7 trillion with a T dollars have lobbied against right to repair, right? This is not only a story of David versus Goliath, this is like David versus like 5, 10 Goliaths, right? But despite the, industry power, the amount of money that's behind this, and their ability to, hire the best and fanciest lobbyists with the most access in DC or wherever your state capital is, the fact of the matter is that we're making progress and we're moving forward, right? So this past year, we passed 2 of the first right to repair bills since the original right to repair bill on cars was passed back in 2012 in Massachusetts. So we passed a powered wheelchair bill in Colorado, and then a consumer electronics bill in New York, which unfortunately was, kind of cut out at the knees a little bit at the end of the process. So there are still some things we need to fix in other states. But the good news, that was a huge breakthrough for our campaign and for our movement. And so, I actually recently, as y'all might be aware, I write a monthly column for the TechNation magazine, and I talked a little bit about some of the progress that we're making and how we did it. And actually, I've got to share this because I'm so excited about it. Just yesterday, we passed the. Oh, is this coming through? Let's see if I can reload this. We've passed the first tractor right to repair law in the country in Colorado. This has, been one of my priorities as well. I've worked with farmers from all over the country who are fed up. They face equipment downtime like you face with your equipment, whether it's a ventilator, a dialysis machine, or the like. They have to pay higher repair costs, much like you might be strong-armed into a service contract. But all of that, despite it, we were able to get this first bill across the finish line. We're expecting the governor to sign the bill within the next 10 days. From what we hear, he's very excited to do it. And so in this recent column that I wrote for TechNation magazine, right, I talked a little bit about, yes, how is this CT scan like a combine harvester, but also, what we can learn from our success in the agricultural space when it comes to right to repair, right? So I kind of talked on 4 different main points, right? And for one, there was organizing the frustrated farmers, right? Talking to these folks who had real stories, who were dealing with this, who could demonstrate to the lawmakers and decision makers and to the public through the media how ridiculous this problem is and how they're hobbled by their inability to fix equipment that they paid sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars for. In addition to that, we have made our case, here, there, everywhere, right? We have legislation at the state and federal level. As I mentioned, 26 states this year. We're expecting that number could climb to 28 or 29. We have federal legislation. We've made our case with the Federal Trade Commission. We've done it. We've heard from the DOJ. President Joe Biden even included right to repair in his executive order that was aimed at increasing competition across the economy back in 2021, right? We are pushing on all fronts because we're not sure where the breakthrough will happen, and all of the momentum that is built from each kind of level or venue of the campaign builds upon each other and brings us closer to making progress. And also, we've won the people. When you hear a biomed tell a story about having to drop everything to rush into the hospital in the middle of the night because there's a piece of equipment that's broken that, they need to find a way to fix in order to save a patient's life. When you hear a story about ventilators that go unused for months at the beginning of the pandemic because the manufacturer refused to deal with an ISO, refused to send them the PM kits that they needed to, get those ventilators that came off the shelf ready for use on a patient, it becomes very clear that there's a problem here that needs to be solved. So by winning the people, by winning over the, essentially winning in the court of public opinion, we can overcome the influence of those really large, frankly, industry interests. And then the other thing, right, this first thing that I've got here is nailing the technical facts. And that's what I particularly want to talk about today, and what I'm really excited about this shared effort that we are, pursuing with MD Publishing. When it comes to agricultural equipment, we were able to demonstrate directly how the software tools that are available to farmers are not the same that are available to the dealers, right? And so we were able to pinpoint the areas in which farmers could not fix their own tractor, how that impacts them, what the facts are, and we were able to use that to, undermine any chance for misinformation, and we were able to make that clear to lawmakers so that they understood why our solution was actually going to solve this problem. That's what we're trying to do with this new, this incident report that I know MD Publishing has been running for a while, but we've actually, joined forces to try and capture more of these anti-competitive acts that are coming from manufacturers. So first of all, let me say that the reason we're focusing on anti-competitive actions are, for one, that gives us opportunities kind of across the different venues that I talked about, right? We can take this information to, folks at the Federal Trade Commission, investigators that are looking for ways in which manufacturers, and I would just say, companies in general, are engaging in illegal anti-competitive practices. We can, to the degree that if you share your story and are comfortable with it, we can talk about the outrageous violations of the ideas of ownership. Excuse me, the ideas of ownership and being able to fix things and making sure that we're delivering the best care to patients. Excuse me for a second. And we can also bring those to the public through the media. We can bring those to legislators, which all help us move closer to passing medical right to repair legislation. So here I'm showing this this URL here. What I would strongly recommend y'all do, and let me just actually drop this in the chat. Oh, no, I can't do that to everybody, but hopefully I hope that you go, when you just go to the onetechnation.com, right? You can, let's close some of these other tabs, make this a little quicker. If you go to this right to repair tab here, that will take you to the right to repair incident report, right? And what I would recommend is bookmark this page so that you have it ready to go, so that when you do encounter anti-competitive practices, you're able to pull it up quickly and put your information here. So, unfortunately, the form's not showing on my screen. So if you just click that link, right, it'll take you to this Google form. And so what we've got here, right, is kind of an explanation of why it's so important that we get documentation and examples. As I mentioned, right, whether it's a legislator, an FTC investigator, or a reporter, all of those groups want specifics, right? They want to know the facts, they want to get it. And so being able to collect this information is hugely helpful to that effort so that we can, put together trends. We can find if there are particular companies that are the most, egregious with their violations, et cetera. So we've got some information there. And then we've also got some listed out the various examples and types of anti-competitive behavior that we're trying to capture through this tool, right? So I won't read them off to you because I know that y'all can handle that yourselves, but it's good to take a look through this list, take some time to understand that, so you at least have it in the back of your head so that when something does happen, you're able to quickly say, oh, this is an anti-competitive practice, I need to log something in the form. So if you scroll down, and I will note, right, we also take your privacy very seriously. So, we won't share your information with the public if you don't want us to. We've actually set this up so that, not everybody can access it, so that, I know that some folks rightfully fear retribution, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen. So let's go ahead. I'm going to enter like I am filling out a report myself. I didn't capitalize my own R. Okay, Kevin@O'Reilly.com. You can put your phone number. It's helpful just from the perspective of, we might need to get in touch with you to get some more information. Again, we won't share this information outside of that. And then I'm with Burke, right? So you go to the next page. And this is where, again, we've got information on the types of FTC violation that you could have. This doesn't look like it's quite the way it's supposed to be. So this should be a drop-down list, but we'll make that edit and get that right for y'all. Then what we ask for is we ask for information on manufacturers. So let's say Joe's Ventilators. We ask for, whether you work for an ISO or a hospital. We want to know who that is, so that we can just have a clear picture of what's going on. So Perg General Hospital City. I'm based in Boston. And then here we go. Here we've got the different types of FTC violation. So, right, exclusive dealing means tying or bundling arrangements means in order to make something work, you have to keep going and paying essentially the manufacturer to keep it working, right? It's an illegal tying is essentially when a manufacturer sells you something and then requires you to continue to pay them for some reason, even though they've transferred ownership over to you. Maybe you don't have access to, for some reason they're locking you out is the general idea of the second type of violation. There's false or misleading statements, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So mark any and all that apply, right? This is a multiple choice and you can select more. So it may be that this ticks a couple boxes, mark what it is. After this, we ask you to provide just, a couple sentences. You don't need to go into immense detail, but if you've got some time and do want to type a little bit more up, that's really helpful. Just to describe, yes, we've got who the manufacturer is, but what's the product? Who did you talk to? What did they say? What does this mean for patients and for your ability to continue to serve patients? What does this mean for your biomed or clinical engineering department, et cetera? And then here we've got, I would argue, one of the most key elements of this tool, which is where you can attach documentation, right? We need to have the receipts if we're going to go to lawmakers, to the FTC, to the media, and make these claims, right? So grab screenshots, download emails, do all of those things so that even if it's notes from a phone conversation, right, we need to have some sort of documentation that we can fall back on to make sure we're accurately representing what actually happened and that we're doing so, in a legal and an ethical way, right? The last thing we want to do is go and tell stories that don't match the facts. And then we also have a question here, if you'd be willing to talk to someone from the Federal Trade Commission. They are looking for firsthand accounts, and also they're going to ask better questions than we could get through this forum to better understand the problem. So that's something you're willing to do. They can't guarantee confidentiality, i.e. if, we won't be telling anybody that you're talking to the FTC, but if they put out a ruling or a judgment or anything like that, your name could be included. So just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that. So let's just finish this. Oh, that's a submit. I'm not going to submit. I'm going to clear the form here. And so what I can do here, that's a basic rundown of the form. Again, I can't emphasize how important it is that we really nail the facts here, that we demonstrate how things are going down, what is going down, so that we can do our best to make sure that the people who have the power to change things know and are well informed, but also to make sure that we're approaching the problem in the right way, that our legislation does make the most sense to move forward. Maybe it turns out there that a lawsuit is in order. Maybe it turns out that a FTC complaint is in order. Maybe it turns out that we need to launch a corporate campaign to just call on manufacturers to do better. We can't make those decisions without being well informed by on the ground information. And so I just want to thank you all in advance for your part in helping us crowdsource this information so that we can be successful in ultimately making sure that you have access to what you need to fix your equipment and getting a medical right to repair legislation across the finish line. The last thing I want to just quickly talk about is the kind of status of medical right to repair in the states and what's going on. And some of you might be aware, right? We've pushed at the federal level. Senator Ron Wyden had a bill back in the fall of 2020 aimed at providing medical right to repair for the duration of the COVID-19 emergency. Unfortunately, that didn't get taken up and didn't move forward. We've had state legislation in many states. The 26 number that I shared earlier regards to any kind of right to repair bill. We currently have a few medical right to repair bills introduced. One that we're excited about the possibilities is in Delaware. Actually, we've got a strong sponsor there. We've got a lot of support from the medical and hospital community in the state. I'm actually going to be talking to the sponsor tomorrow about talking some strategy and making sure we're set up to do the best we can there. We think there could be legislation coming a little bit further south. Don't want to share too much information, but we're also working with a lot of folks across the country to organize the medical communities and the biomed communities in their own states, right? So I was recently talking to the Kansas City Biomed Association. I've worked closely with the Washington State Biomed Association, as well as hospitals in those states and other groups, and like patient safety groups, to show and build the coalition that we need to make progress on legislation in the states to, be able to go to a potential bill sponsor who would introduce the legislation and say, look, we've got your back, right? We've got the facts, we've got the people, and we've got the invested parties to show that this is something that needs to move forward, which makes it all the more easy for them to take things up. So if you haven't, are interested in doing that, add me on LinkedIn, let me know. I'll share kind of our starter kit of how to get that going in your own state. And we're hopeful, right? I mean, I'm not sure that 2023 will be the year that we get medical right to repair legislation across the finish line. It's a little bit more difficult because legislators can be a little bit more hesitant given the high impact of this equipment. But I firmly believe that this is what we need to do to best protect patients. So with the work, by organizing the right groups and the right folks, I feel confident that we can make that case, do so effectively, and drive this legislation across the finish line. Okay, blah, 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 lots of information. I'll pause there and would love to hear if there are any questions.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. We've got a couple of questions plus a couple of comments as well. So a question that's actually just come in. What does FTC stand for, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I have a tendency to get a little jargony. FTC is the Federal Trade Commission. So they are a federal commission, as those are two of the words in FTC anyways. They're basically like our competition bureau, right? So they have authority to monitor the market and see if there is illegal anti-competitive behavior happening. And what they can do is they can come in and bring suits against companies who are illegally conducting anti-competitive behavior, or can make sure that they essentially have the power to stop that from happening.
Okay, that's great. I hope that answered the question for the attendee. Another question here is, how do you determine whether or not OEM behavior is anti-competitive?
That's a great question, right? And sometimes things aren't going to be super black and white. So I think the first thing to do is to take a look at the list that we've compiled, the explanations of what they are. But ultimately, I think, for one, if when in doubt, go ahead and submit the example, right? We'll take a look on the other end and make sure kind of our legal minds who are helping in this effort we'll be able to make an assessment there. But generally speaking, right, anti-competitive behavior is behavior in which you don't have a choice, right? You don't have options. You have to go back to one party in order to get something done. So I think use that principle, and then the descriptions we've described, we include in the form as your guiding lights, and when in doubt, fill it out.
Great. What, if any, legislation or movements are created available for ISOs in medical device service?
Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry.
Yeah. What, if any, legislation or movements are created available for ISOs in medical device service?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for one, our template legislation when it comes to medical equipment, right, is geared at making sure that both hospitals and ISOs have access to, comprehensive repair materials. So we recognize that, hospitals, yes, are the buyers of the equipment, they're the owners of the equipment, but also ISOs are an important party, and they are important in the fact that they do bring competition to the market, and they make sure, in the process, that prices stay affordable and that service meets, a certain level. So ISOs are a big part of it. And then as far as movements go, this movement is not focused on just hospitals. It's about bringing as much of the medical servicing community together as we can, because being able to point to private businesses, to public hospitals, and everything in between only makes our coalition broader and stronger as we make this push.
Great. Another question here is, so a fee to expedite service may be reportable?
That's a good question. My initial thought, right, is just based on what I've seen elsewhere, right, of my own, like if you want to get expedited shipping, you have to pay a little bit more. My thought would be that expedited fees probably don't fall into the bucket of anti-competitive, but I think that if it's a case where they won't even offer you the normal service at a normal rate, it's worth bringing in to just show some of the kind of strong arm tactics, which absolutely we should bring light to.
Great. So another question here is, are the FTC violations that are listed on the complaint form violations of current laws in force?
Yes, they are, and that was our basis for generating that list, right? So we worked with some of the lawyers at groups like IAMers and different important kind of members of the Right to Repair Coalition, like Mason Weta and others, to look at things like the Sherman Antitrust Act, which was passed, I think back in like the Teddy Roosevelt trust busting days, right? But are really the foundation of antitrust law and about the even the Federal Trade Act. Anyways, those that list is based upon firm U.S. Antitrust law, and so that was our guiding light as we built out that list.
Okay, great. Another attendee here said, I hear from many vendor reps that certain parts cannot be sold or service provided due to FDA regulations. Is there any truth to these statements? And if so, how does that impact future legislation?
Yeah, so I think, there may be cases in which that is true, but often, from what I've seen, we've seen manufacturers hide behind FDA FDA rulings and FDA guidelines as a reason to restrict repair, even though that's not what the law says. So in the event that someone says FDA prevents us from doing it, ask them for what, exactly what language, what text, what regulation says that they can't do so. I would encourage you to do that. Do your own research and kind of serve as the first point of skepticism. So do it politely, of course, and no need to accuse anybody of anything, but ask them, please share which regulation you're talking to, and making a judgment call on that. And that can be, again, another source of that's misrepresentation of if a company is saying that they can't do something because of FDA regulations, but regulations don't say so. That could rise to the level of illegal and anti-competitive behavior.
Great. Another question here is, AAMI collected a mountain of data demonstrating that in-house HTM departments do not represent an added risk to patient safety. Can any of that information data be used to help the case of right to repair?
Yeah, so I'm not positive that the AAMI data is the same that what I'm going to talk about. So if it's different, again, please find me on LinkedIn and send the link over. But what we continually turn back to is the FDA's own report that they released back in 2018, that when they looked into third-party servicing and in-house servicing, right? After manufacturers had been crying foul saying that this is unsafe, that only we can fix it, right? The kind of benevolent monopolist argument of just trust us, leave it to us, we'll take care of it. The FDA looked into it. They cited an ECRI study. They looked at the MOD database. They looked at a bunch of information. What they concluded was, first of all, that many third parties, hospitals, and OEMs are providing high quality, effective, and safe servicing of medical equipment. And then they went so far as to say that the continued availability of third party servicing is critical to the functioning of the U.S. healthcare system. So that's as strong as you can ask. It is to go directly to the FDA, and that's something that we cite continually in our advocacy efforts, whether we're talking to lawmakers or to the media, just saying, look, here's what the facts say, here's what the FDA says. We don't have concerns about that. In fact, that's a huge part of why we argue that really the issue to patient safety is downtime and the inability to use the equipment as a result of these repair restrictions.
Okay, what can we do about vendors that charge $550 per hour for phone help?
For phone help, oh man. First of all, I feel for you. That's an outrageous rate. Unfortunately, this is the environment in which we live in this, hyper consolidated and monopolized repair market. So, the first thing I would do is the first thing I would say is start getting active in your state, talking to your colleagues and others in the community in your state to try and build some support for right to repair legislation. Because ultimately, that's our goal here, right? We want to bring down those costs. We want to bring down the service time. We want to provide you with more options. And the only way that we're going to do it is if y'all get involved and push forward and join the advocacy cause.
Okay, the attendees just replied, that's GE.
No comment there. No, that's frustrating. I'm sorry to hear that.
Okay, another question here is, do you speak at symposiums such as CABNet?
I have in the past. I know that my colleague, our senior director, Nathan Proctor, I believe he's hopefully going to be speaking at the upcoming symposium. I'm actually, after this, I'm going to be flying to Houston for MD Expo to give, part of the presentation I just gave you and talk with the folks there. Yeah, happy to, if you've got a group and who you think would be interested in hearing about this, please reach out to me, and we'd love to be in touch so that we can maybe help to activate some folks in your community.
Okay, I've just got a couple of comments here. They're not actually questions, but I would add that anyone who works for the OEMs who is aware of intentional acts to restrict service and parts to hospitals and third parties to submit this form as well anonymously.
Yeah, ditto there. I think that's really critical. If there's something that is, frankly weighing on your conscience, submit it. We will keep your information private, and it can help us move things forward.
Okay, another comment here is Google Docs is blocked by my organization's IT department. It doesn't mean I couldn't use a personal device to report an incident, just useful to be aware of and maybe utilize a more commonly allowed form or tool.
That's a good flag. I'll see what we can do about that. Thanks for the feedback.
Okay, we've got one more question here, Kevin. It's how will these reports bring us closer to getting medical right to repair?
Yeah, so these reports will help us, hopefully build a mountain of evidence of how these anti-competitive practices are impacting your ability to fix equipment and therefore impacting, your organization's ability to safely treat patients, to bring down the cost of healthcare. And we know that those are priorities for a lot of lawmakers. So by having this information, we can go and make a really strong argument. And when manufacturers come, and they often sell what we like to call fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? They might, intentionally or not, spread some misinformation that undermines the case. We're able to point back and say, look at all these records that we have. Look at the facts of the matter. This is a real problem. This is an urgent problem. And sharing those stories and the impacts, right, is what wins folks over. Data is important, absolutely. But at the end of the day, people are storytellers, and that's how they react best. So having this bank of stories, this bank of information, this bank of evidence is critical to our ability to win over champions for right to repair and ultimately win laws at the state and federal level.
Okay, what about, and just one more popped up. Do you think we will see action from the FTC faster than R2R would help?
I think that typically things with the Federal Trade Commission can take some time, right? That is just a fact of the matter. But as I mentioned earlier in the talk, right, we believe that, yes, one option may be faster than another, one option may be more comprehensive than another, but if we press on all fronts, if we put every iron in the fire that we can, then we can maximize the momentum, right? If we're able to break through in one, that's going to help if we pass a state law, that might help the FTC Act. It might help another state pass a more comprehensive bill. It might help leaders in Congress and DC to take up the cause and move things forward. So we firmly believe that the full court press is the best thing that we can do. And so, we do, while there has been a lot of talk about the Federal Trade Commission, this information will help us on all those fronts. And so we want to prioritize actions from y'all. I know you're busy people. I know you have a lot going on. So we think that this is one of the strongest ways that you can help us in that full court press across venues, across different opportunities to ultimately get right to repair on the books.
That's great, Kevin. And just before we wrap up, what is the best way for anybody to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so first of all, if you're on Twitter, that's a good place. Go and follow me. I'm at Kevin_O'Reilly7 with no apostrophe. So check that out. Additionally, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can follow me on there. I know I'm connected with a lot of folks in the space there, and I try to post relatively regular updates. So please add me on either or both. Would love to be in touch and hear about how this problem affects you, and talk to you about how you can get involved.
Great. Thanks so much, Kevin. We will wrap up now to allow you time to fly and spread the word at Houston MD Expo. So thank you so much for your time and for a great and informative presentation as usual. Please visit onetechnation.com to read Right to Repair articles written monthly by Kevin, and obviously to access the updated Right to Repair form online. As promised, the answer to today's trivia question is Georgia. So congratulations to our winner, Patricia Payne. Just a quick reminder, you can obtain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey, which will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE credit from the ACI, and you'll be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. We'll be back next week with another webinar, so please visit webinarwednesday.live for more details and complimentary registration. Thank you once again all for your time today. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you next time.